The Kaduna State Governor, Naira Rufai, has described the current scarcity of Naira notes as part of an alleged plot to disrupt the forthcoming general election to ensure that an interim government takes over. Making a state broadcast, Governor Rufai alleged that the development was meant to ensure that the presidential candidate of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and other candidates of the party lose out in the elections. He claimed that those who lost out in the party's primaries were behind the plot. In his words, and I quote, "It is important for the people of Kaduna State and indeed Nigeria to know that contrary to the public pronouncements and apparent good intentions, this policy was conceived and sold to the president by officials who completely lost out in the gubernatorial and presidential primaries of the APC in June 2022. Once Asiwaju Bola Tinubu emerged as a candidate in June 2022 and subsequently did not pick one of them as his running mate, this currency redesign policy was conceived to ensure that the APC presidential candidate is deprived of what they allege is a humongous war chest." Earlier in the week, Governor Rufai in that state broadcast dared President Muhammadu Buhari on the Naira redesign policy, declaring the old notes to be legal tender in his state. Shortly before that, Buhari had declared that old 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes were no longer valid, while extending the validity of the 200 Naira banknotes till April 10. He asked Nigerians to take the higher denomination bills of the Nigerian currency to the central bank for deposit. El-Rufai said that only a subsisting case on the matter before the Supreme Court of Nigeria would decide otherwise.
On behalf of the Kaduna State Government, I wish to assure you that none of you would lose the money you have in old notes. Let no artificial or illegal deadline frighten you. Whether you live in towns, villages, or in our isolated rural communities, do not feel stampeded to deposit your old notes into the banks. Hold on to them. Continue to use them as legal tender as ordered by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. No deadline can render them worthless, ever. The law is on your side. The Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007 in Section 20, subsection 3, and the Bills of Exchange Act both oblige the Central Bank of Nigeria to recognize your old notes and give you value in new notes whenever you bring them to the CBN, even in the next 100 years. Therefore, as your governor, I wish to assure you that the Kaduna State Government, in collaboration with elected legislators, our traditional institution, elected local government councils, markets and traders associations, and so on, will help you collect, record, document, collect, and deliver all your old notes to the Kaduna branch of the Central Bank on your behalf into the new ones immediately after the elections.
The Supreme Court had last Wednesday adjourned till Tuesday, February the 22nd for the continuation of the case, effectively failing to renew its earlier order extending the time within which the old Naira notes should remain in circulation. Well, the Apex Court actually, maintained its position, the position that it took on February 8th, and thus, by that effect, the Supreme Court actually extended its order. The Apex Court, however, joined the Attorneys General of Katsina, Lagos, Ondo, Ogun, Ekiti, and Sokoto states as co-plaintiffs in the matter. The Attorneys General of Edo and Bayelsa states were joined as co-defendants. The court also ordered the original plaintiffs and the respondent, the Attorney General of the Federation, to amend the processes already filed to reflect the new parties. The difficulties arising from limited access to cash to members of the public in the past few weeks triggered a series of violent protests in some urban centers across the country. It first started in Ibadan, Oyo State, where hundreds of young people lit bonfires across major roads in the city and barricaded major roads, disrupting economic activities and spreading tension across town. Speaking with Arise News, some of the aggrieved youths called on the federal government to urgently address the situation before things get out of hand. Here in Lagos, It was a nervous early morning last Friday as various flashpoints erupted across much of the Lagos mainland. Sporadic gunshots were heard along large stretches of the busy Ikorodu Road from the popular Mile 12 market through K2 bus stop and Ojota, leading to a number of casualties.
Price of goods has increased. Then we also have fuel scarcity. This is enough to incite Nigerians to come on street to send this administration back home, because this is not what they promised Nigerians in 2014 when they are coming. Same thing in 2000.
The past few weeks have indeed thrown up a deadly concoction of issues underpinned by a thriving political narrative, which rather than make light, have instead deepened a prevailing public distrust in the Nigerian system. There is a growing view that the position of the Supreme Court in recent pronouncements may not have helped its public perception, and politicians, ostensibly trying to exploit weaknesses in the judiciary, have cooked up the current situation to create chaos, all on the eve of the coming presidential election. Mike Ozekhome, senior advocate of Nigeria, a lawyer, professor, and commentator of national issues, now joins us. Thank you very much, Professor Mike Ozekhome, the Akpava Bigi of Edo land. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, a cocktail of issues that I tried to
Dr.
narrate.
Abati.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome, Nigerians.
Thank you for joining us. Well, earlier in the week, you wrote a piece in which you said that the broadcast that was made by the President of Nigeria on Thursday amounted to an assault on the integrity of the Supreme Court, and that the President of Nigeria acted in contempt of the Supreme Court. And you argued that the Supreme Court should bark and bite. What really is the argument? Considering the fact that the President of Nigeria has powers under Section 5, he has interest, overriding interest, public interest, under Section 14, subsection 2, and he's president after all. And he says he's empathizing with Nigerians, he's defending the interest of Nigerians. What do you have against that, beyond legalese?
I went beyond that, Dr. Ruben Abati. I described the action of the president in frontally and blatantly and brazenly disobeying the order of the Supreme Court and varying it as a totalitarian and dictatorial act reminiscent of Emperor Louis XIV of France, who on the 13th of April, 1655, stood in front of Parliament and declared imperiously, "L'état, c'est moi. I am the state." He did not last more than 20 minutes in office. He was removed just like his dad, his father. I said that once a court is seized of a matter under the doctrine of lex pendens, whether an injunction be granted or not, the parties who have submitted their disputes to the court must await the court's decision. The states of Kogi, Zamfara, and Kaduna sued the federal government represented by the Attorney General of the Federation. Even if the Supreme Court on the 8th of February had not granted an interim injunction, as they are entitled to do, using their earlier case of Kotoye versus CBN, the parties ought to await the decision of the Supreme Court and not do anything that will resort to self-help. That is what the Supreme Court said in Ozekhome case. That's what he said in Attorney General of Lagos State against Ojukwu. That's what he said in the case of Abacha versus Ganifa Emi. You must await the court decision. You have no right to vary the decision. You have no right to ignore the decision because you do not like it or because you believe it is it is inelegant or inappropriate or illegal or unconstitutional. That is the job of the court under Section 6 of the Constitution. While the president has to do his job under Section 5 of the Constitution, which you mentioned, at the legislature under Section 4 of the Constitution. But in all this, Abati, it is the court that decides disputes between persons and persons, between governments, state governments, and the federal government, and between state governments and state governments, depending on which of his jurisdiction is being invoked. If it is appellate, decisions come all the way from area court or magistrate court, high court, federal high court, court of appeal to the Supreme Court. If it is in its original jurisdiction, then you have to come under Section 232, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution. And it must be a dispute on which a legal or factual right depends between a state and the federal government and the federation. It didn't say a state and federal government. There's a difference between a state and federal government and a state and federation. Just as a state is a legal entity which does not amount to its citizens, so also the federal government acts under Section 5 of the Constitution, but does not amount to the federation, which is created under Sections 2, subsections 1 and 2 of the Constitution, to say Nigeria shall be a sovereign, independent, and indissoluble state.
Professor Ozekhome.
Comprising of 36 states of Nigeria and 774 local government areas. So, what we are saying today, whether the Supreme Court was right or wrong, states ought to abide by that interim injunction and await 22nd of this month when the Supreme Court will hear all parties and pronounce on it.
Professor Ozekhome.
Disobeying the court will lead to a situation of anarchy, chaos.
Okay, Professor Ozekhome. That's what the law says. Yeah. The law as it is, right? However, can the president of Nigeria act?
The law as it is, yes. Yeah.
Can the president of Nigeria act in overriding public interest, considering the fact that this same government ignored the courts in the Nnamdi Kanu case? This same government ignored the courts in the Zaki case. And if you look at the the spirit of the president's address this week, last week, the president was sympathizing with Nigerians. He was empathizing with Nigerians. And he has a responsibility to ensure the security and welfare of the Nigerian people. Hence, he said, till April 10, people can have access to old 200 Naira notes. And it's not only in Nigeria that the Supreme Court has been disobeyed. I can quote many cases from Italy, from Belgium, from UK, from Canada, from France, where the Supreme Court had been shoved aside in overriding public interest.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It is like the statement also made by Mr. President in 2016, that rule of law should be subjugated to what he called the national interest. The national interest, Abati, is never equal to the interest of the government in power. I'm happy that you have narrated some instances of brazen violation of court orders by this same government. We cannot say because some foreign countries, which are pro-people, violated an order of a court on an occasion, therefore we should enthrone such a regime of crass abandonment of the judicial arm of government as irrelevant. You have mentioned the case of Zaki. You mentioned that of Sabo Dasuki. You mentioned that of Nnamdi Kanu. I did that case. I got the 8 of the 15 count charge dismissed by the Federal High Court. I went to the Court of Appeal, got the remaining 7 count charge dismissed by the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal said, this man should be released and should never again be prosecuted by any court of law in Nigeria on these charges. As I speak to you, the federal government is holding Nnamdi Kanu in his SSS Gulag. You are telling me that is in the national interest? So when the president decides to violate court orders. You say it is acting in the national interest. Where has Mr. President been? Where Boko Haram, armed bandits, insurrectionists, kidnappers have been ravaging Nigeria, killing people in their farms, on their home, in their homes, in schools, on the streets, in the rivers, on the waters, on the air. Where was he? Where has he been when kidnappers would dictate to parents of kidnapped school children the type of food they must buy for them to sustain their children for the purpose of paying ransom? Buy tomatoes, buy tarodo, buy tatashe, buy palm oil, buy vegetable oil, buy salt, buy rice, buy barley, buy oat, buy wheat, buy beans, buy yams for us to feed your children and fatten them for you to come and pay ransom. Where was Mr. President? How come it is this sudden later day? Let me not be mistaken. But let me put this caveat. Let me enter this caveat. I am not speaking about the beauty of the currency swap or the change of currency. Anybody who has followed currency swaps across the world in 1999, when 11 nations initially joined the Eurozone to begin to use euro, later joined by other countries, heavens did not fall. Nobody quarreled because it was planned out. In 2019, when 8 West African countries decided to do away with their CFA franc and begin to use ECO, countries like Mali, Senegal, Niger Republic, Guinea-Bissau, nobody is quarreling with that. Nobody quarreled because they gave them enough time. Countries like Croatia, which in January this year even joined the euro and changed its currency. Countries like China that won't change its currency, the yuan. Countries like Russia, when it broke down into 15 states, sovereign states, in 1991, changed its currency in 1992 to have new coins. And the Russian ruble is one of the oldest coins in the currency in the world, starting from the 14th century. And the Chinese yuan is one of the 5 leading currencies in the world. That is not the issue. So nobody is talking about the demerits or merits of changing currency. There are a lot of advantages, a lot of merits. We are only talking about the timing. Question: this timing that has led to a lot of Nigerians burning, carrying out arson, burning banks, mounting roadblocks, fighting soldiers, fighting police, with some young men stripping themselves naked inside bank. One I particularly saw that drew tears in my eyes, and I cried, and my wife had to give me tissue to mop my eyes. He said, I have 500,000 plus in this bank. All I need is 100,000. My wife is in the hospital. She's dying. My children are dying of hunger. I need money to sustain my family. The old money was not available. The new money is not available. Ruben, for the first time in my life, I saw Nigerians purchasing money with money. Purchasing brand new money, say for example, 10,000 Naira or brand new money, with about 4,000 to 5,000 Naira of old money, when the central bank still allowed it up to 10 according to them. We are seeing a situation where there are mass killings across Nigeria. So the question is not the merits or demerits. It is about the timing. Do you know, Ruben, that in September last year, the Queen of England died, Queen Elizabeth II, and she was succeeded by his own son, who is now King Charles III. Nobody heard that the British pound sterling was being changed with the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II replaced quietly with that of King Charles III. Guess what? It is to take effect from middle of 2024. That's from September last year. So they were giving nearly 2 years ahead. How many Nigerians know that the title of Queen's Counsel, QC, which is the equivalent of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, SAN, has since changed to KC, King's Counsel? And that when you want to tell a person now you are speaking good Queen's English, you will now tell the person you are speaking good King's English.
Professor Ozekhome.
Heavens did not fall because there was proper planning.
Professor
It is the planning we are talking about here.
Professor Ozekhome,
yes.
2 things. Let me go back to the point I made earlier about overriding public interest. People have said, and I hope I'm quoting them directly, that the reason that the president is backing the CBN on this policy, although you are complaining about timing, is that, look, the president wants to prevent a situation whereby people who have stashed money away in all kinds of places will use the money to buy votes. Do you have a problem with that? And then the second part of that is that in your intervention, you said the Supreme Court should back and bite. What exactly can the Supreme Court do to the president of Nigeria when they reconvene on Wednesday, considering the fact that the president of Nigeria is actually a monarch within the purview of Section 5 of the Constitution? The
president of Nigeria, Dr. Abati, I disagree with you, is not a monarch. He is an elected president. His term expires after 4 years, Section 135 of the Constitution. He's not a revered Oba or an Emir or an Eze whose kingship is by primogeniture from father to son. So he's subject to the rules and regulations that apply in Nigeria. We call it rule of law. No one shall be above the law, because a country should be a country governed by laws, not by strong men. So, notwithstanding whatever the president thinks he was doing in the interest of the nation, he must await the Supreme Court decision on the 22nd of this month to know which one to go, where to go. The Supreme Court has not yet decided. He didn't say that the governors were wrong or were right. He didn't say the federal government was wrong or it was right. But they did what was needed to be done. We call it interim injunction, which is maintain the status quo ante bellum, the state of affairs before the crisis or the war broke out, as the same Supreme Court heard in Akapo versus Habib's case. That is, what does that mean?
What language is that?
Drive away the fox first. Oh, we power no language. My own language.
Is that in the Constitution?
And I believe that no other language is superior to my own.
Is it in the Constitution?
It doesn't have to be. It's your Yoruba, Hausa, and the Fulani and Igbo. Are they the Constitution? So I am saying, I am speaking my own language and I've interpreted it. That is, drive away the fox first before you blame the fowl for wandering too far into the forest. That is all that the Supreme Court has done. Maintain status quo. And you are now telling me that the president can, on his own volition, vary that order of the Supreme Court by saying, oh, don't follow what the Supreme Court is saying. You know what? CBN begin to issue 200 Naira notes. 500 Naira notes and 1,000 Naira notes are banned as legal tenders. That will return us, Dr. Abati, to a total state of chaos, anarchy, and the Hobbesian state of nature, where life was short, brutish, nasty, and solitary. We cannot have that in the year 2023. And then you ask the question, what can the Supreme Court do? Because the president, of course, has immunity under Section 308 of the Constitution. But the president's immunity, the vice president's immunity, a governor's immunity, a deputy governor's immunity, all under Section 308 of the Constitution, subsists for as long as they are in office. And the Supreme Court has even heard that although you cannot charge them to court for now, you can probe them, you can investigate them, and then you use the process and the results of investigation to later charge them to court if you want. So the Supreme Court may not have the power. It does not have a gun of its own. I mean, after all, it was said like that by Alexander Hamilton in his Federalist paper, number 78, where he said that the judiciary is the weakest of the three arms of government because it has neither sword to defend the judgment nor purse to keep any money. We know that. But the court, and the Supreme Court for that matter, the highest court of the land, has moral authorities to deprecate in very strong words what the president has done, so that never again must we build strong men, but we have to build strong institutions. The sympathy of Mr. President can be understandable, but unfortunately, he's doing it outside the legal regime, outside our constitutional dispensation. And by the way, is it not queer, Ruben? Does it not surprise you that it is the same party versus the same party, the people who have gone to court, Kaduna State, Zamfara State, and Kogi State, are the same APC government with President Buhari? And they are saying that what the president is attempting to do is to cause crisis so that there will be an opportunity to enthrone interim government. Let me quickly speak on that. Interim government, no. It is unconstitutional. It is illegal. Justice Dolapo Akinsanya, may God bless her soul. I was in that case with Chief Ganifa Emi. We went to court to declare the interim government of Ernest Shonekan to be illegal and unconstitutional. And the court voided that government. After that, Chief Shonekan merely barely managed, groggily, wobbling, dwaddling, fumbling, crumbling, before Abacha came in and took over that government. So interim government has no place in our constitutional dispensation because Section 1, subsection 2 makes it clear. Say, Section 1, subsection 1, this constitution is supreme. And if any other law is inconsistent with this constitution, that other law shall be void. And then subsection 2 of section 1.
Well, Professor Ozekhome,
the government of Nigeria. Nigeria is a sovereign state, and no person shall take over the governance of Nigeria except in accordance with the provisions of this constitution that abhors military coup d'etat. Well, so the issue of interim government does not arise.
Professor Ozekhome, two quick things. By way of diversion, with due respect, when you were speaking the Wepawano language, you said other languages mentioned in the Constitution. I recall that Section 55 of the same 1999 Constitution recognizes English, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, English. Wepawano is not mentioned in Section 55.
I'm aware of Section.
Anyway,
I'm aware of Section 55, which says, hold on, Ruben, I must touch that. I'm aware of Section 55 that mentions English, Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, and that is why Nigeria is having a problem. You want to stand Nigeria on a tripod, it cannot work. Professor Onigu Otite discovered 374 ethnic groups in Nigeria, of which my own, Wepawano Esako, is an ethnic group. Are you saying I mean nothing? Are you saying I'm not important? It is this segregation, this discrimination, this disrespect by the bigger tribes against the smaller tribes that make Nigeria not to be today anyway, a safe place for anybody. You cannot ignore me. God was not foolish in creating me as a minority within a minority. He was not foolish. He knew what he was doing. I should be respected in my own country. I do not want to be a Hausa man. I don't want to be a Fulani. I don't want to be an Igbo man. I don't want to be a Yoruba man. I'm proud to be a Wepawano man. So I spoke my language. Aimako, Amakpa Tukola, Nena Noko, Semozakalo there. Drive away the fox first before you blame the fowl for wandering too far into the bush. That is what the Supreme Court did. Okay. They have not decided the main matter.
Professor Ozekhome, I have just 2 more questions. I want to take you back to the point you made about the interim government and draw your attention to Section 135, Section 3 of the same 1999 Constitution, which says
I mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, that under certain circumstances, if the country is at war, if there's turmoil, chaos, and all of that, the National Assembly can stretch the tenure of the president for a period of not longer than 6 months. That's what Section 135, Section 3 says. Don't we have such a situation now? Don't the people pushing for an interim government, don't they have a case within the purview of that, constitutional provision, considering the spread of violence across the country?
I tell you one thing. A president ceases to hold office after 4 years until he's succeeded by another one. There's no place for interim government. There is no war, there's no civil war going on in Nigeria. There's no danger, there's nothing that has endangered the corporate existence of Nigeria. Dr. Abati, the pockets of violence we are seeing here and there, have you forgotten 2020 during the NSAS riots? It was more severe. Did you not see Nigerians murdered in cold blood at the toll gate in Lagos, at Lekki? Did you not see violence erupt in Ibadan, Benin, Sapele, Warri, Kano, Oshogbo, Port Harcourt, Owerri, Umuahia, Uyo, Calabar, all over the country? Why did the president not declare a state of emergency? They didn't see it was necessary. Is it now a president is going to declare a state of emergency or say that, oh, let us transit, let the president of the Senate become acting president, maybe trying to invoke the doctrine of necessity? There's no situation that has called for that. What we are seeing is a situation where there is an implosion, where there is self-immolation, where a party is fighting itself. As they were coming into power, they first fought themselves. The unity group, headed by Gemade, preferred Ahmed Lawan, Senator Ahmed Lawan, to be Senate President. The like-minded group, headed by Dino Melaye, Senator of the 8th Republic, one of the best we had in this country, preferred Senator Bukola Saraki. While the APC were gathered at the International Conference Center, Abuja, planning what to do, Senator Bukola Saraki and his own allies were smart enough. They went to the hallowed chambers of the Senate, the red chambers. They were able to garner majority votes, and they emerged the Senate president. Do you know what a friend told me? A friend told me that he thinks that that original sin of Saraki is what the president has still not forgiven him for, which was why he was said to have been recommended for the award of the GCON, Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, like all former Senate presidents and vice presidents, and he was not given. That is, politics are not interested. But the point I'm making is that when, yes,
we really have to go now.
The point I'm making is that when the governor of Kaduna State, Governor El-Rufai, begins to frontally disagree with President of Nigeria, of his own party, and I said, power is ephemeral. As an aphrodisiac, the intoxicating liquor must begin to wane. I could not have imagined El-Rufai 2 years ago frontally confronting President Buhari. But as he goes towards the end of his tenure, barely 3 months away, it is now like an old lion, once the king of the jungle, that roars and other animals run away. When it is getting old or it is sick, you can see a little mice or a little rat coming to begin to nibble at his tail. That is what is going on. I do not want to be involved in the politics of it all. I'm more interested in the legalism, in the constitutionality of what has been done.
I'm sure Nasir Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State, will not agree with that characterization that he's a little rat, but in any case, he can speak for it.
I'm not saying, no. Okay. I just made I just made, no. He's not a rat, but it's my good friend. It's never a rat at all. What I mean is compare with the president in terms of position in the country, particularly of the same political party. He is a governor of one of 36 states of Nigeria, while the president governs the whole country. And if one governor who used to revere and deify and canonize the president is now suddenly attacking him frontally, I am saying a lot has gone wrong. It means that towards the end of a tenure, a president begins to lose his aura. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Governor El-Rufai is never a rat at all.
We have to wrap up now.
I was just making
we have to wrap up now.
An oxymoronic situation.
Okay, we have to wrap up now, but it
was a figurative expression.
Okay, it's important for us to state that our responsibility here at Arise News is to ensure to support every effort to make sure that the elections hold as planned. And we are committed strictly to the interest of Nigerians and to the constitutional order. Finally,
the elections.
Finally,
Dr. Abati, the elections must hold. The elections must hold. The elections must hold. But I'm curious why some people will be saying that the only reason the president is doing this is because his own candidate, his own political candidate, he does not want his own political candidate to win. I cannot understand. Or can you? I do not understand. We are not talking of another political party. Is it not an oxymoron? Is it not an irony that a governor of a party is accusing the president of his party that they do not want the governor of his party, the governorship candidate of his party to win? It is not even other governorship candidates that are complaining. Why are the politicians complaining? Did they really build up money in excess? Did they really build up Naira in excess? Maybe which they are now being prevented from using to corrupt the electoral process, to bribe the electorate. Is that what they are trying to tell us? If they are trying to tell us that, let them say it clearly. Well, Nigerians, don't take any money from any politician. Go and vote. Go and vote your conscience. Vote people.
On that note,
who will carry out the ideals of a great nation.
Professor Michael
Don't be corrupted by money. Don't buy your future ahead.
Professor Michael Ozekhome, I mean, you can be sure that we're on the same page. The elections must hold. Nigerians must go out and vote.
Oh, yeah.
And make an informed choice as the elections begin 6 days from today. We'd like to thank you very much.
Don't be intimidated.
We'd like to thank you very much for joining us.